Hello, and welcome back to Void Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy the Void Whispers that creep in during the dead of night, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1, my wife was in a car accident a few months ago. I still remember the call. I remember the way my phone shook in my hand before I even answered it, as if some part of me already knew something terrible had happened. I remember the voice on the other end telling me there had been an accident. I remember not understanding the words at first. They sounded flat and far away, like they were coming through water. Then I heard her name. After that, everything became too clear. I drove there faster than I should have. I do not remember stopping at red lights. I do not remember checking mirrors. I only remember gripping the steering wheel so hard that my fingers hurt, telling myself over and over that she was alive. She had to be alive. Whatever had happened, whatever I was about to see, she had to still be breathing. When I reached the scene, there were flashing lights everywhere. Police cars, an ambulance, people standing along the road, staring the way people always stare when tragedy has nothing to do with them. Her car was off the side of the road, half crushed against a tree, the metal folded in on itself like paper. I would not wish that sight on my worst enemy. I mean, obviously no one wants to see someone they love trapped inside a wrecked car. That should not need to be said. But there is a special kind of shock that comes with seeing it in person. Movies and TV shows make it look dramatic. Loud, fast theirs, music, screaming, heroic action. Real life is different. Real life is the sound of glass crunching under your shoes. It is the smell of gasoline and burnt rubber. It is a paramedic telling you to stay back while every bone in your body wants to run forward. It is seeing one familiar hand hanging through a broken window and knowing instantly that it belongs to the woman you married. She was upside down. The car had rolled, and she was hanging from the seatbelt, her hair falling toward the roof, which was now beneath her. Blood dripped from a deep wound on her forehead. It ran down her face in slow red lines and fell onto the crushed ceiling below. Her eyes were half open, but they were not looking at anything. That image will never leave me. Unlike her. That is the cruel joke, I suppose. I remember everything, every detail, every second, every sound, but she remembers nothing. When she finally woke up, I expected tears. I expected fear. I expected her to whisper my name or reach for my hand. I expected something, anything, but there was only emptiness. She looked at me like I was a stranger. At first, the doctors said it might be temporary. Head injuries are complicated. Memory is delicate. Sometimes people come back slowly. Sometimes a smell, a song, a photograph, or a voice can open something inside the mind. So I waited. I sat beside her bed and talked to her. I told her who I was. I told her about our life. I told her how we met, where we lived, what she liked, what she hated, what shows she watched when she wanted comfort. I brought her clothes from home and placed them near her. I held her hand even when she pulled away. She never gave me any sign that anything was coming back. No sudden memory of my name, no little smile when I mentioned our wedding, no recognition when I showed her photos. No memory of her job, her friends, our bedroom, our kitchen, our favorite restaurant, or the first apartment we lived in. Just blank looks. Cold stares. Confusion. It was like my wife had been emptied out and someone had left her body behind. And it is not like I did not try. Day after day, I took care of her. I cleaned her wounds. I changed bandages. I helped her eat when her hands shook too badly. I helped her walk when she was weak. I brushed her hair because she would not do it herself. I bathed her because someone had to. I kept her safe at night because she would wake up scared and try to wander. I did everything a husband should do. Maybe more. I guess some people would say it was unfair that I brought her home so quickly. They would say she needed more hospital care, therapy, specialists, nurses, all of that expensive nonsense people love to suggest when they are not the ones paying. But those medical bills were already climbing higher than I could handle. We were not rich. I could not bankrupt myself just so doctors could keep doing things that were basically common sense. Feed her. Wash her. Keep her from hurting herself. Remind her who she was. I could do that. I was her husband. Wasn't that my responsibility? Still, after everything I did, I expected at least something from her. Some small spark. Some sign that she understood I was the man who had pulled her from darkness. I was the one who sat by her bed. I was the one who brought her home. I was the one who gave her a place to heal. I was her guide through what was probably the most terrifying time of her life. But all I got in return were those empty eyes, those blank faces, that stiff, frightened silence whenever I came too close. At first, I was patient. I told myself she could not help it. Brain injuries were strange. Fear was normal. Confusion was normal. Maybe she was still trapped in the accident in her mind. Maybe some part of her was still hanging upside down in that car, blood dripping from her forehead, unable to understand that I had saved her. So I became determined. If it was the last thing I ever did, I was going to see her smile again. Not the fake smile she sometimes gave me when I asked her to. Not the stiff little pull of the mouth that made her look like she was trying not to cry. A real smile. The kind she used to give me before everything happened. The kind that reached her eyes. The kind that made me feel like I had a reason to wake up. I tried everything. I started letting her go outside during the day. Not far, of course, just into the yard where I could watch her. Fresh air was supposed to help people heal. Sunshine, nature, familiar places. I thought maybe standing in our yard might bring something back to her. Maybe she would see the little garden she used to care about and remember planting flowers there. Maybe she would look at the fence and remember painting it. Maybe she would feel the sun on her face and suddenly say my name. Instead, she stood there barefoot in the grass, staring at the trees like she had never seen them before. "Where am I?" she asked. That was all she ever gave me. Where am I? Who are you? Why am I here? I tried to be patient, but after a while, those questions started to feel less like confusion and more like refusal, as if she did not want to remember, as if she had decided that forgetting me was easier than loving me again. So I tried food. I cooked her favorite meals. At least, I cooked the ones I remembered. Pasta with too much garlic. Tomato soup with grilled cheese. Pancakes on Sunday mornings. Chicken with lemon and herbs. She used to love those things. She used to close her eyes when she took the first bite, as if food could make the whole world better. Now she would sit at the table, staring down at the plate. Eat, I would say, gently. Sometimes she did. Sometimes she pushed the food around with a fork until it went cold. I tried television next. I put on her favorite shows, old sitcoms, cooking competitions, crime dramas she used to pretend were boring but always watched until the end. I sat beside her and laughed at the parts she used to laugh at. I cried during the sad scenes she used to cry over. Nothing, so I went bigger. I watched the entire Star Wars series with her because she had always loved those movies. All of them. Even the ones people complained about. She used to defend them like they were members of her family. She had strong opinions about characters, timelines, and scenes I never really cared about, but I watched every single one with her. I laughed where she would have laughed. I pointed out her favorite moments. I looked over at her again and again, waiting for that spark in her eyes. All I ever saw were tears and confusion. After a while, my efforts started to fade. I hate admitting that because it makes me sound cruel. But how long can one person keep trying when the other gives nothing back? I was doing all the work. I was carrying both of us. She just sat there and stared at me like I was some monster who had broken into her life. I began to think that maybe forcing it was the problem. Maybe memories needed room to return naturally. Maybe trying too hard only scared her. So I stopped pushing. I gave her space as much as was safe. I let her sit. I let her wander from room to room. I let her stare out windows. I let her be quiet. That was when the notes started. At first they were small, sticky notes, little squares of paper in soft colors. Yellow, pink, blue. She must have found them in a drawer somewhere. I started finding them around the house. The first one was on the kitchen table. This isn't my house. I stared at it for a while, then crumpled it up and threw it away. Of course it was her house. She just did not remember it. I told myself the note was part of the healing process. Maybe writing things down helped her organize her thoughts. Maybe the doctors would have encouraged it if we could afford to keep seeing them. The next note was on the refrigerator. You need to get out. That one annoyed me. Get out of where? My own house? Our house? The place where I cooked for her, bathed her, watched over her, and kept her alive? Still, I threw it away and said nothing. More notes appeared over the next few days. I found one on the bathroom mirror. He is lying. One on the bedroom door. Do not trust him. One on the back window. Find a phone. That one made me angry. I had removed her phone for her own safety. She did not remember people. She did not know who to call. What if she hurt herself? What if she called some random person and scared them with nonsense? What if someone took advantage of her confused state? I was protecting her. That was what she did not understand. The notes kept coming. They were not just annoying anymore. They started to feel personal, like an attack, like she was testing me, like she wanted to see how much I would take before I snapped. Then they changed. One morning, I woke up and found a sticky note on my nightstand. That's not your husband. I read it 3 times. My first reaction was to laugh because it was so stupid. I was her husband. I had the marriage certificate. I had the pictures. I had the ring on my finger. I knew her scars, her allergies, her favorite songs, the way she slept, the way she used to hum when she folded laundry. Who else could I be? But the note bothered me. I threw it away. Later, I found another one stuck to the bathroom mirror. That's not your husband. Then another on the hallway wall. That's not your husband. Then one on the inside of the pantry door. That's not your husband. By the end of the day, I had found 6 of them. The next morning, there were more. She had stuck them to the front door, one on each of the 7 master locks I had installed for security. People might think 7 locks is too much, but people do not understand how unsafe the world is. They do not understand what it means to have a confused wife who might try to run into the street because she thinks she belongs somewhere else. They do not understand what it means to protect someone from themselves. Each lock had a note. That's not your husband. That's not your husband. That's not your husband. Over and over. I stood there looking at them, and something inside me hardened. Fine, I thought. We would have to try harder. If she wanted to fight the truth, then I would make the truth impossible to avoid. I went through the house and collected every note. I found them in drawers, under pillows, behind picture frames, inside cabinets. She had been busy, more busy than I realized. Maybe that should have made me happy. Maybe it meant her mind was coming back. But instead, it felt like betrayal. I had given her a safe place to heal, and she had turned my own house into a wall of accusations. When I found her in the living room, she was sitting on the sofa with her knees pulled to her chest. She looked smaller than before. Thinner, her hair was tangled, and the scar on her forehead had healed into a pale line. I held up the notes. "What is this?" I asked. She stared at them, then at me. Her lips trembled. "You're not him," she whispered. I took a slow breath. "We have been through this. You're not my husband," I smiled gently, because I knew anger would only scare her more. "You're confused," she shook her head. "No, I remember now." That made me pause. For months, I had waited for those words. I had begged for them in silence. I had cooked, cleaned, watched movies, told stories, and held myself together while waiting for her to remember. But when she finally said she remembered, it did not feel like victory. It felt like danger. "What do you remember?" I asked, her eyes filled with tears. "I remember my husband." I stepped closer. "I am your husband, no," she said. "You're the man who pulled me from the car." My mouth went dry. "That is what a husband would do." She shook her head again, harder this time. "I remember the accident. I remember driving. I remember you following me." "That's not true. I remember seeing your car behind me. You were confused. You hit your head." I remember trying to call him. Her voice cracked on the word him. "Not you. Him." I could feel my pulse in my throat. She continued, barely whispering. "You took my phone. You took my purse. You brought me here." I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell her how wrong she was, how the injury had twisted her memories, how the mind can create false images after trauma. I wanted to make her understand that I had saved her. But she kept looking at me like I was the accident, like I was the thing that had ruined her life. "I want to go home," she said. That sentence hurt more than anything else. Because she was home. This was her home now. I had made it her home. I had taken care of her here. I had kept her safe here. I had done what no one else would have done. I looked at the notes in my hand. Then I looked back at her. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "you are not well." She started crying. "I know who I am, no," I said. You know pieces, broken pieces, but I can help you put them back in the right order. She stood up too fast, almost losing her balance. Stay away from me. There it was again. That coldness, that fear. After everything, still fear. My patience broke a little. Not all the way. I would never hurt her. Not really. But something inside me shifted. I realized kindness was not working. Freedom was not working. Food, movies, fresh air, gentle words, none of it had helped. She needed structure. She needed treatment. She needed to feel like herself again, even if she fought me at first. So I changed the house. I locked the windows. I moved sharp things out of reach. I blocked the back door. I checked the locks every night. I stopped letting her into the yard unless I was with her. I took away the pens and sticky notes because they were feeding her delusions. She hated me for it. I could see it in her face. But hate is not always a sign that you are doing the wrong thing. Children hate medicine. Patients hate surgery. Addicts hate people who take away the bottle. Sometimes love looks cruel to the person being saved. And I loved her. That was the part no one would understand if they saw us from the outside. They would only see the locks. They would only see her tears. They would only hear her saying I was not her husband. They would not see the months I spent caring for her. They would not see the blood on my hands when I pulled her from the wreck. They would not see the nights I stayed awake to make sure she kept breathing. They would not see how much she owed me. A few days later, I found one last note. I do not know where she had hidden the paper. Maybe she had torn it from a book. Maybe she had kept it under the sofa cushion. She had written with something sharp, maybe a broken bit of charcoal from the fireplace. The letters were shaky but clear. My name is not what he calls me. That one made me sit down. For a long time, I just stared at it. Names are important. Names are anchors. If she rejected the name I used for her, then she was rejecting everything. The life I had given her, the marriage I had built around us, the future I had been trying to restore. I went to the room where she was sitting. She looked up when I entered. I held the note in front of her. What is this supposed to mean? I asked. She swallowed. It means I remember. I shook my head. No, it means you are getting worse. Her eyes moved toward the door. She still did that sometimes, even though she knew it was locked. The movement was small, but I saw it. I always saw it. You need help, I said. I need you to let me go, I smiled sadly. That is exactly why I can't. She began to cry again, but I was tired of tears, tired of confusion, tired of waiting for her to become grateful. So I made a new plan. I am writing this now because I want there to be a record. People misunderstand love when it becomes difficult. They think love is flowers and dinners and soft words. They do not understand that sometimes love is work. Sometimes love is sacrifice. Sometimes love is doing what must be done, even when the person you are saving hates you for it. If anyone finds this, they might think I am the villain. They might look at the locks on the door and the notes I threw away, and the woman upstairs who keeps insisting I am not her husband, and they might make assumptions. But they do not know what she was like after the accident. They do not know how empty her eyes were. They do not know how hard I tried. And if she keeps saying she remembers another life, another man, another home, then that only proves how badly her mind is still broken. But do not worry, sweetheart. You will feel more like yourself soon. I still have your favorite sweater folded beside the bed. I still have the movies ready. I still know the foods you loved before the accident. I still know how to speak gently when you shake. I still know how to hold you still when you try to run. And tomorrow, we will start again. This time, I will not let the wrong memories win. Story 2. Life on Earth was normal until the seeds came down. No one saw them arrive at first. There were no burning lights in the sky, no giant ships above our cities, no strange signals picked up by satellites. There was no warning on the news, no emergency broadcast, no scientists standing behind a microphone telling us that something had entered our atmosphere. The seeds came quietly, drifting through space for longer than any human mind could understand, and then falling through our sky like dust. They were almost impossible to destroy. Extreme cold did nothing to them. Extreme heat did nothing. They could survive without sunlight, without air, without soil, without water. They had crossed distances so huge that our maps and machines could barely describe them. They had passed through darkness, radiation, silence, and vacuum. By the time they reached Earth, they were patient in a way no living thing here had ever needed to be. All they needed was soil. One little drop of water. A few nutrients. That was enough. The seeds landed in fields, gardens, forests, parks, riverbanks, farms, deserts after rain, cracks in sidewalks, and forgotten patches of dirt beside roads. They settled into the ground without anyone noticing. Maybe a few people saw small, dark specks on their windowsills or in their yards, but no one thought anything of it. Earth is full of dust. Earth is full of pollen, seeds, spores, and dirt. We are used to things falling from the air and becoming part of the ground. So we ignored them. Then they began to sprout. But they did not sprout like plants on Earth. They did not push green leaves toward the sun. They did not grow soft stems or reach for open air. They had not survived the deep cruelty of space by needing light. They had not crossed galaxies to behave like flowers. They sprouted downward, deep into the soil. They sent thin roots into the dirt first, quiet and careful. Those roots moved slowly at the beginning, threading their way between stones, worms, pipes, and old bones. They did not crack the surface. They did not rise where anyone could see them. They spread beneath our feet, month after month, then year after year, while we kept living above them. We walked over them on our way to work. We slept above them. We planted gardens in soil they had already claimed. We buried our dead in ground they were quietly eating through. Nobody knew. The first signs were small enough to dismiss. A homeowner would go down into the basement and find strange rusty roots pushing through a crack in the cement wall. They looked dry and fibrous, like old rope soaked in orange mud. People cut them away with garden shears or burned them with small torches. For a while, that seemed to work. Then the roots came back. Thicker, longer, more twisted. Construction crews began finding them wrapped around water mains. Workers digging foundations for new homes found bundles of them curled under the soil, woven together like nests of snakes. Maintenance crews found them in sewers, lining the dark tunnels and hanging from the ceilings in thin strands. In some cities, subway workers discovered them creeping along the walls beside the tracks. At first, everyone called it a new kind of weed, a strange invasive root system, a problem for gardeners, city workers, and pest control companies. People posted photos online. Scientists argued. Some said it might be a mutation caused by pollution. Others said it was a species from another continent carried through shipping containers. A few warned that it was spreading too fast, but their voices were swallowed by jokes, arguments, and everyday life. We had jobs to go to, bills to pay, children to raise, dinners to cook. We did not have time to fear roots, so we burned them back. We cut them. We sprayed them with chemicals. We dug them out and threw them into piles. Each time, they returned thicker than before, and still, we dismissed it, until there was too much to dismiss. By the time the plant reached maturity, it had already taken hold of the planet. That is the part that still feels impossible to understand. It was not in one city or one country. It was everywhere. Beneath forests, beneath farms, beneath deserts, beneath mountain roads and island towns, beneath the concrete hearts of cities, beneath military bases, hospitals, schools, churches, and homes. No soil was untouched. No continent was free. The roots had formed a vast hidden web under the world, slipping through dirt and rock and metal. They moved around foundations, through tunnels, into pipes, under oceans near the shore, and deep into places we had never dug. All that time, they had been growing beneath us like a second planet wrapped around the first. And we still did not see it for what it was. That was humanity's great mistake. We believed danger would announce itself in a way we could understand. We expected disaster to look like fire, flood, war, plague, or a giant rock falling from space. We did not know how to fear something quiet. We did not know how to fear something that waited. The roots had one purpose: to hold the earth, to wrap every continent in their grip, to drink everything dry. When they finally came up, the world was not ready. The first eruption happened in a residential street in Brazil. At least, that was the first one recorded clearly. A security camera caught the road swelling upward at dawn. The asphalt cracked. A bundle of orange roots burst through the surface, thick as arms, writhing like muscles. They rose into the air, twisted together, then spilled across the street. Within minutes, more roots broke through lawns, sidewalks, and driveways. People came outside in pajamas, filming on their phones. Some laughed nervously. Some ran back indoors. Some got too close. That video spread everywhere. By noon, there were similar reports from South Africa, India, Canada, Japan, France, Australia, and the United States. Roots were coming up in parks, roads, fields, factories, train stations, and shopping centers. Some were thick as tree trunks. Others were thin as threads. They came up in piles, in sheets, in tangled, crawling waves. Still, many people were not frightened at first. What was a plant going to do? That was what people kept saying. We had machines. We had fire. We had chemicals. We had saws, axes, guns, explosives, and armies. We had spent all of human history fighting nature and forcing it to move aside. Why should this be different? At first, we did hold them back. Workers cut them from roads. Soldiers burned them. Farmers drove tractors through them. Cities sprayed them with poison. People posted videos of themselves chopping the roots apart and cheering. It felt like we were winning. It was nothing. Until it was not. The roots had spent years beneath the crust of Earth, learning the world from below. They had wrapped themselves around pipes and cables. felt the hum of machines, the vibration of trains, the heat of houses, and the patterns of human movement. They had listened with bodies that did not need ears. They had studied us through pressure, warmth, and tremor. We thought we had found a strange plant. The plant had found prey. By the time we looked closer, we were already inside its mouth. It began with animals. Rats vanished first, though most people did not notice or care. Then cats went missing. Then dogs. People reported pets disappearing from locked homes. A dog would be sleeping in a kitchen. Then the owner would hear scratching, a crash, a short yelp, and find only cracked tiles and a small hole in the floor. In apartments, people found thin roots pushing through bathroom drains and kitchen pipes. In basements, they came through walls. In old houses, they slithered between floorboards. The roots could eat through cement. They could push through metal. They could enter through plumbing, gas lines, vents, and sewer systems. There was no safe ground because the ground itself belonged to them. Within a week, the world became chaos. The roots no longer only covered the ground. They moved. They writhed. They searched. They had no eyes, but they did not need them. They felt the slightest vibration. A footstep could draw them. A dropped glass could send them twisting toward the sound. A heartbeat against the floor might be enough if they were close. We learned quickly, but not quickly enough. We stopped wearing shoes indoors because hard soles made too much noise. We moved slowly, carefully, placing our feet like thieves. People climbed onto tables, counters, rooftops, trees, cars, anything that lifted them away from the ground. We covered drains. We stuffed towels under doors. We tied bells and cans far away from shelters to distract the roots with sound. Sometimes it worked. Usually, it only bought time. The girl next door died in her bathroom. Her parents had locked all the drains in the house except that one. No one knows why. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they thought the upstairs bathroom was safe. She went in, closed the door, and a few minutes later she screamed. It was one short scream, then another. Then something wet slammed against the inside of the door. Her father tried to break it open, but her mother held him back because the floor had started to shake. Orange threads were pushing up around the toilet, under the sink, and through the bathtub drain. By the time the roots pulled back, there was nothing left of the girl but water on the tile and a smell like turned earth. After that, we locked our bathrooms and did not use them again. We covered every drain we could find. We stuffed them with cloth, metal plates, plastic, tape, anything. Hygiene disappeared. Houses stank. People became sick from filth and fear, but at least the roots could not easily hear water running through pipes or feel movement near the drains. At least, that was what we told ourselves. By the second week, power had failed in many towns. The roots wrapped around underground cables and transformer stations. They swallowed maintenance crews who tried to repair the damage. Cities became dark and silent, except for the sounds people made when they forgot to be quiet. Daytime was almost worse than night. In daylight, you could see what the world had become. Streets covered in orange vines, cars wrapped in roots like old toys caught in weeds, buildings cracked open from the inside, parks turned into pulsing fields of rusty tendrils. The roots moved slowly when nothing disturbed them, but they never stopped. They crawled over the land like the nerves of some giant buried body. At night, bombs fell. Planes flew overhead and struck the ground with missile after missile. The military tried to burn the root systems back from major cities. They hit highways, fields, industrial zones, and infected forests. For a while, the explosions made us feel safer. We heard the thunder in the distance and told ourselves that someone still had control. But the roots did not retreat. They burned. They broke. They blackened. Then they grew again, and the bombs were running out. The governments that remained told people to move toward the coasts. Inland rescue became almost impossible. Helicopters could land only in places cleared by fire, and even then, the roots often felt the vibration and came up before everyone could board. Convoys were trapped on highways. Trains stopped. Airports were overrun. People fled on foot, moving across rooftops, bridges, and abandoned vehicles, trying not to touch the ground. Many never made it. Rumors spread that the safest places were at sea. Aircraft carriers, cargo ships, cruise ships, oil platforms, anything floating far from shore. The roots could not reach deep ocean. Salt water slowed them. They could grow along coasts and shallow seabeds, but not far enough to reach ships anchored miles out. So the sea became our last hope. My group was among the lucky ones. A military helicopter found us on the roof of a school after 3 days with almost no food. There were 27 of us then. Children, elderly people, 2 nurses, a mechanic, a teacher, a soldier with a broken arm, and me. We had watched roots take the streets below. We had watched them pull people out of windows when they leaned too far. By the time the helicopter came, some of us were too tired to climb the ladder. The roots came as the helicopter lifted. They burst through the school roof in thin, whipping strands, reaching for the sound of the blades. One wrapped around the landing skid. The pilot screamed for us to cut it. Someone used a fire axe. The root snapped, and orange sap sprayed across the floor. The helicopter lurched upward, and we left the school behind. I looked down as we flew away. The whole city seemed to move. Not buildings, not streets. Roots, miles and miles of them. That was when I understood that we had lost the land. We were taken to an aircraft carrier that had been turned into a floating refugee camp. It sat far from shore, surrounded by smaller ships and patrol boats. The ocean around it shone gold in the sunset when we arrived, and for the first time in weeks, I saw people standing without fear of what was beneath their feet. The carrier held about 1,000 people. 1,000. That number felt both huge and tiny. 1,000 survivors where there had once been billions. 1,000 voices in place of cities. 1,000 frightened people pretending they might still rebuild the world. There were military rations and water supplies. Not enough forever, but enough for now. Doctors had set up a medical bay. Families slept in bunks and storage rooms. Soldiers kept watch along the rails. People whispered about other ships, other carriers, other safe places scattered across the oceans. We believed we could endure. We believed the roots would eventually starve. We believed that once the land was burned clean by our remaining weapons, we would return and begin again. Hope is a strange thing. Even after everything we had seen, we still reached for it. But the roots had devoured thousands of worlds before ours. Earth was not their first hunt. We learned too late that they did not only spread through soil. They adapted to whatever life remained. They learned the shape of their prey. They learned how bodies moved. They learned how to use us. It only took one person. He was found floating near the carrier just after sunset. Men on the lower deck spotted him in the water, drifting face up. He looked dead at first, but when they pulled him in, his heart was still beating. His lungs still worked. He was cold, pale, and silent, but alive. No one knew where he had come from. Maybe a wrecked boat, maybe a failed rescue. Maybe he had somehow escaped from shore. We were so desperate for survivors that no one wanted to question it too hard. They took him to the medical bay. One of the last doctors left alive examined him and said he seemed stable, exhausted, dehydrated, but not infected in any obvious way. There were no roots on his skin, no orange fibers in his mouth, no visible wounds except small cuts and bruises. So they brought him to the bunks. That was the end of us. Night fell slowly over the carrier. The ocean turned black. Candles and flashlights glowed between rows of bunks. People spoke quietly. Some prayed, some cried, some tried to sleep. Then someone shouted. It was quick, a single burst of fear from somewhere below deck. Most of us froze. A second scream followed, longer this time. Then the whole sleeping area came alive. People grabbed flashlights. Soldiers lifted rifles. Parents pulled children close. Beams of light swung wildly through the dark. What they showed us was impossible and inevitable. Rust-colored threads were twisting through the bunks. They came from the rescued man. His body lay arched on the cot, mouth open, eyes staring at nothing. Thin orange roots pushed from his skin, sliding out from under his fingernails, through his nose, from his ears, from the corners of his eyes. They were not killing him. Not anymore. They were using him. His arms jerked, moved by something inside them. His fingers clawed at the metal frame of the bunk. More roots spilled out of him, down onto the floor, through cracks, around pipes, into walls. Someone fired a gun. The noise doomed us. The roots exploded into motion. They shot toward the vibration, lashing through the air, wrapping around legs and arms, dragging people from bunks. The carrier became a metal trap, filled with screams. People ran, but every footstep called the roots faster. The hallways were narrow. The stairs became death funnels. The roots spread through vents, drains, doorways, and wiring channels. There was nowhere to run. There was nowhere to hide. The final safe place for humanity had only been another feeding ground. I saw a soldier try to reach the deck with 3 children behind him. Roots came through the wall and took him sideways, so fast his boots stayed on the floor. The children scattered, and I do not know what happened to them. I saw a woman climb onto a table and hold her baby over her head, begging someone to take him. I saw roots crawl up the table legs. I ran until there was no place left to run. The last thing I remember from the carrier was the sound of metal groaning as the roots filled it from the inside. The ship itself seemed to shudder, like a living thing being strangled. Our final hope died there. But maybe hope had only ever been a mirage. Now Earth is quiet. No cities glow at night. No engines move across highways. No voices rise from stadiums, markets, schools, or homes. The land is wrapped in orange roots from pole to pole. They cover fields, mountains, streets, and bones. They climb towers and sink into oceans near the shore. They hold the planet the way a fist holds something it has crushed. When the roots finish drinking the last of what earth can give, they will do what they have always done. They will make seeds. Those seeds will harden against cold, heat, vacuum, darkness, and time. Then the roots will use the final strength of our dead world to fling them back into space. They will drift through the void, silent, patient, unnoticed, somewhere far away. Another planet will turn beneath a gentle sun. It will have oceans, soil, warmth, and life. Creatures there may look up at the sky and think they are safe. They may build homes, tell stories, fall in love, raise children, and believe their world belongs to them. Then one day, the seeds will fall. And like us, they will not notice until the roots are already beneath their feet. Story 3. July 8th, 1761. If this letter is found after my death, I ask that it be taken as the last written confession of Alfred P. Hakeswell, once captain of the Thunderer, a slave ship in the employ of the East India Company, though I no longer deserve that title or any honorable name given to a man. I write this with a loaded pistol on my desk, a candle burning low beside me, and the heavy feeling that something is coming for me before dawn. I do not know if God will hear the prayers of a man like me. I do not know if there is mercy left for a soul so stained. But if there is any corner of heaven where even the worst sinner may be allowed to fall to his knees and beg, then I beg now. And if there is no mercy for me, then I accept damnation. It is deserved. This letter is my final confession before the shape I dread comes crawling to my door. I hear it sometimes in the walls, though the servants swear there is nothing there. I hear the wet dragging of it in the hall, the soft scrape of nails on wood, the whispering sound of water where there is no sea. Each night it comes closer. Each night I remember more. And now I must write everything, before my courage leaves me, or my hand is no longer mine to command. For 15 years I committed the sin of slavery. I was not a simple sailor who obeyed orders without understanding them. I was not some innocent fool caught in the machinery of trade. I knew exactly what I was doing. I made my fortune by treating human beings as cargo. I sailed the seas as a dealer in the flesh of men, women, and children. I stood in markets beneath a burning sun and watched people examined like animals. I saw men forced to open their mouths so buyers could inspect their teeth. I saw women turned around and touched like livestock. I saw children pulled from their mothers and sold to strangers while their screams rose into the hot air. I did not stop it. I profited from it. There was one old planter from South Carolina whom I remember more clearly than the rest. He was dressed in fine clothes, heavy silk stretched around his round belly, his face red from drink and heat. He pointed to a man I had brought from the African coast and asked me to pry open the poor man's mouth. I did so. The planter bent close, peered at his teeth, and laughed. "I'll need a new set in time," he said. He meant it as a joke. Perhaps he meant that the man's teeth were strong enough to last through years of labor. Perhaps he meant something worse. I never asked. I only smiled as a merchant smiles when money is near. The enslaved man's eyes were gray and empty. His body lived, but something inside him had already died. His soul had been torn from him long before he reached that auction block. It had been left somewhere on the shore of a country I helped steal him from. I sold him for 20 pounds. Along with him, I sold a small boy who had to be pried from his mother's arms. I still hear that child crying. I hear the mother, too. In dreams, I see her fingers clawing at empty air as her son is dragged away. Those cries have followed me across oceans, through storms, into taverns, into the beds of women, into every room where I tried to drown my memory with drink. They are with me now. I deserve them. I deserve far worse. Every face I sold now waits for me behind my closed eyes. Thousands of dark faces stare from the blackness whenever I try to sleep. I used to think guilt was a weakness that troubled soft men and priests. Now I know guilt is a hunter. It walks slowly, but it never stops. It was guilt and fear that changed me. Yet the event that opened my eyes did not begin with repentance. It began, as most of my sins began, with greed. 6 months ago in Jamaica, I met the Pale Man. We had docked there to restock supplies and unload our most recent human cargo. It was a smaller shipment than usual, and many had died before we reached port. But those who survived still brought enough profit to satisfy the men whose purses mattered. I settled wages, handled accounts, and allowed myself a night of pleasure. I drank heavily. I visited a woman from Ireland whose red hair smelled of lavender and sweat. Afterward, I found myself in a loud tavern near the docks, thick with smoke, sailors, laughter, cards, and sin. I sat with a cup of rum punch and gin, letting myself sink into the warm, stupid comfort of drunkenness. That was when he appeared. He stood beside my table as if he had grown from the smoke itself. He was tall, taller than most men, with shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway. He wore a silk coat and matching breeches, both fine enough for a lord. His skin was pale as china, too smooth and white for a man who had walked beneath the Caribbean sun. A black wig sat perfectly on his head. His face was clean-shaven and powdered, his cheeks painted with rouge. His teeth shone yellow when he smiled, the same greasy yellow as the gold on the hilt of his sword. There was something wrong with his beauty. He looked too polished, too still, like a doll made by a master craftsman, then filled with something that should not have been alive. "Do I have the pleasure of addressing Captain Hakeswell?" he asked. His voice was soft, almost delicate. In the noise of the tavern, I should not have heard him. Yet his words rang clear in my ears, as if spoken inside a church bell. "Whether it is a pleasure or not, I cannot say," I answered, already irritated. "But I am Captain Hexwell." "Then it is a pleasure," he said. He removed his black tricorn hat and bowed with such grace that several men nearby turned to watch. It was not a sailor's bow. It was not even a gentleman's bow. It was almost a curtsy, neat and pretty as a court lady's gesture. "I have been seeking a man of your kind for a long while," he said. "My kind?" I asked. He sat across from me without waiting for permission. The filth of the tavern did not seem to touch him. He took a small clay pipe from his waistcoat and filled it from a pouch. Then he lifted one finger. A small man in dark clothes hurried from the crowd. I had not seen him before. One moment he was not there, and the next he was beside the table, carrying ember tongs from the hearth. He lit the pale man's pipe with a piece of glowing charcoal, then stepped back. The little man disturbed me even more than his master. His skin was gray and slick-looking, like the belly of a fish. His eyes were round, yellow, and slightly bulging. His lower lip hung thick and pink from an underbite. Sparse black hair clung to his scalp like wet seaweed. He moved with such quiet speed that when he disappeared again into the crowd, I could not find him. The pale man watched me through a cloud of smoke. "Forgive me, sir," I said, "but what would a fine gentleman like yourself want with an old sea dog like me?" He smiled. "Josiah Macready of the East India Company recommended you," he said. "He described you as a man suited for odd trades and odd company." I laughed and took a drink. "That depends on how odd the trade is, and how odd the company." He snapped his fingers again. The small man returned with a roll of paper, placed it on the table, and vanished once more. "My name is Jeremiah Blackwood," said the pale gentleman. "I require a vessel, a captain, and a crew to transport myself and my belongings to a destination of my choosing." "And where is it you wish to go?" I asked. He leaned closer. "To an island near Nassau," he said. "Not one found on common charts." I raised an eyebrow. There are many islands in those waters. If it is worth visiting, men know of it. "Not this one." He unrolled the paper. It was a map of the Caribbean, but unlike any I had ever seen. The coastlines were familiar enough in some places, but strange lines ran across the water in patterns that made no sense to me. The writing along the edges was unknown. It looked a little like Arabic, but less orderly, more like the scratches of an insect across paper. Some symbols hurt my eyes if I looked at them too long. After 15 years at sea, I thought I knew the shape of the world. That map made me feel like a boy again, staring over the edge of a dark well. Blackwood placed one long white finger on an unmarked patch among a cluster of islands. "Here," he said, "this is where you will make your fortune." "There is nothing marked there," I said. He rolled the map back up, smiling like a wolf. "Just because a thing is unmarked does not mean it is empty." Then he spoke of treasure. Not buried pirate coin or Spanish gold hidden in caves. He spoke of a city greater than any city made by man. A city lost beneath jungle and sea, filled with wealth beyond kings, beyond empires, beyond Solomon's temple itself. Gold, he said, was so common there that its people used it like stone. I called him a liar. He did not take offense. "I need a good captain," he said, "but not a good man." At that, I laughed. "Then I am your man," I told him, "if the price matches the job." He promised more than any honest voyage could offer. And I, being greedy and damned, accepted. I remember the handshake. His skin was cold and damp, like something pulled from deep water. His fingers held mine a moment too long. I can still feel that touch when I wake from nightmares. By giving my hand to Jeremiah Blackwood, I gave my crew to death. We sailed from Jamaica the next day. Along with Blackwood and his strange servant, Mr. Potskill, we took aboard several barrels sealed tightly with wax and pitch. They were heavy, and the men complained as they loaded them. I asked Blackwood what they contained. He smiled and adjusted his cravat. "Delicacies," he said, "rare delicacies, highly desired by the people of our destination." "Fruit?" I asked. Of sorts, that was all he would say. The Thunderer had carried death before. Its wood was soaked with suffering. Even empty, it held the stink of fear and old blood. But as those barrels came aboard, the ship seemed to settle deeper in the water, as if some unseen weight had been placed upon it. Blackwood seemed pleased. He walked up the gangplank as if boarding a pleasure yacht instead of a vessel haunted by the cries of the enslaved. His little servant followed behind him, blinking his round yellow eyes in the sun. Once we were at sea, I invited Blackwood to my cabin for rum and cards. He drank with me, though the liquor never touched his face. My cheeks grew warm and my thoughts loosened, but he remained pale and clear-eyed. The lantern swung above us. The ship creaked. The bottle passed between us. I asked him about Potskill. My man and companion, Blackwood said. He has served me for many years, since I was a boy, in fact. He is loyal and very useful for the work I require. And what work is that? Blackwood dealt cards for a game of whist. I am a merchant, he said, a procurer of rare things. That is all I will say. I played a card. How did you learn of the place we are going? He looked at his hand. I was born there, he said. I nearly spat my drink. Born there? On this hidden island of gold? Yes. If that place is so rich, I asked, why leave it? For the first time, his smile faded. The cabin seemed to grow colder. Gold means very little, he said, to a people who use it for cobblestones. He did not speak much for the rest of the game. 5 days out, my first mate, Jensen, came to me with concern in his face. Captain, he said, there are strange things happening with your guests. I told him to speak plainly. It's Mr. Blackwood's servant, Jensen said. The men think him mad. Benjamin and John saw him take salted fish from the stores and eat it raw. No cooking, no cleaning. He tore into it like a beast. I told him sailors often exaggerated. He shook his head. There is more. One cabin boy swears he saw Potskill stripped naked and jump overboard in the night. The boy nearly called out to save him, but then he saw the creature climb back up the other side of the ship, like he had swum under us in a breath. I should have listened. I should have thrown Blackwood and Potskill in irons. I should have opened the barrels. I should have turned back. But I thought of treasure. So I did nothing. After that, rumors spread like sickness. Men spoke of noises below deck, wet thumps against the boards near the barrels. Some claimed shapes followed the ship in the waves, always far enough away to vanish when watched. One sailor said he saw Blackwood standing at the stern at sunset, holding a small carved figure to the wind. It was shaped like a long-armed man. Blackwood sliced his own finger and let the blood drip into the sea. Witchcraft, the men whispered. Misfortune, I laughed at them in public and drank alone in private. Then came the albatross. Potskill killed it on deck with his bare hands. Before anyone could stop him, he tore it open and began eating it raw. Feathers stuck to his wet lips. Blood ran down his chin. His round eyes rolled in their sockets, but showed no shame, no hunger even. Only cold animal patience. One of my crew drew a pistol and threatened to shoot him. Blackwood struck the man before the pistol was raised fully. His fist moved with terrible speed. The sailor fell to the deck and did not rise for several minutes. Blackwood removed his hat and bowed to me. Meat is meat, Captain Hexwell, he said. Meat ought not be wasted. No man answered. Potskill kept eating. We sighted land 2 days later. It was a small island, green and still, with white sand along the shore and jungle rising thick beyond it. It did not appear on my charts. That alone should have terrified me. Instead, I thought of gold. Blackwood chose the men who would go ashore. Myself, him, Potskill, and 2 crewmen to help roll the barrels. He took only 2 barrels at first. I told him we had enough boats to carry all of them, but he refused. "There will be time for the rest later," he said. "First, we must reach the city. They will be expecting us." Those words troubled me, but again I ignored the warning. We rowed to shore beneath a sky too bright and a silence too deep. The island had no bird song, no insects, no rustling in the trees. The jungle was green and thick, but lifeless. A sandy path waited for us beyond the beach, strangely smooth and well kept. One of my crewmen whispered, "Captain, do you find it odd that we hear no beast or bird?" I had no answer. We pushed the barrels along the path. Blackwood walked ahead with his coat bright in the heat. Potskill moved behind him, hunched and eager, sniffing the air. The jungle pressed close around us. Leaves hung still. The silence grew heavier with every step. At last, the path opened into a clearing. There was a lake. It was round as a plate and perfectly still. The sandy path circled it in a clean ring. No building stood there. No city. No walls. No treasure. Only black water shining under the sun. "We have arrived," Blackwood said. I stared at him. "Arrived?" I shouted. "At a pond? You dare bring me across the sea for this? Damn your blood, sir. You will pay for this voyage." Blackwood laughed like a father laughing at a foolish child. He removed his coat, then his shoes. "Look into the deep," he said. I placed my hand on one of my pistols. "What trick is this?" "No trick. Look, Captain, and understand, I wish to God I had not obeyed." I stepped to the edge and looked down. The water was clear. Far below, deeper than any lake had a right to be, a city waited. No human hand could have built it. Its towers spiraled like shells. Its roofs curved like scales. Its streets twisted in impossible patterns, shining with gold, pale stone, and colors I cannot name because they do not belong to this world. The buildings were massive, grander than cathedrals, greater than palaces, and yet they seemed grown rather than built, as if the sea itself had dreamed them into shape. Things moved among them, almost human things. Long, pale, fluid shapes drifted through the streets. Some had arms too thin and too many joints. Some wore gold across their bodies. Some had scales that flashed like coins. Then they looked up. Thousands of white eyes stared at me from the deep. No pupils, no mercy, only hunger and knowing. I cried out and stumbled back. "What in God's name is that?" I gasped. "Christ protect me." 2 pistol shots cracked through the clearing. I turned. My 2 crewmen fell into the sand, blood pouring from their mouths. Potskill stood behind them, holding 2 smoking pistols. His yellow eyes rolled toward me without concern. I drew my own pistol and fired. It misfired. The click of that useless weapon sounded louder to me than thunder. Blackwood was now undressing calmly by the lake. He pulled off his wig, revealing a bald, shining head. He wiped the paint from his face. His painted brows vanished. Without the rouge and powder, he looked less like a gentleman and more like something wearing a gentleman's idea of skin. He removed his shirt. Slits opened along his ribs, fluttering as he breathed. Gills, white scales patched his neck and shoulders. His nails lengthened as I watched, growing sharper and darker. Potskill stripped too, his body small, gray, and fish-slick. He grabbed one of my dead men by the ankles and began dragging him toward the water. Blackwood smiled at me with his yellow teeth. As promised, he said, a land of gold and treasure beyond your understanding. It waits for you, Captain, if only you embrace it. What are you? I whispered. He leaned close. Yet Antone waits below, he said. Then he pushed the first barrel into the lake. It floated for a moment, then something beneath the surface pulled it down. The water remained smooth. I ran. I remember only pieces after that. Potskill dragging the bodies into the water. Blackwood rolling the second barrel after them. His laughter chasing me through the jungle. The silent trees. The sand path. My own breath tearing through my chest. I reached the shore and threw myself into the boat. I rowed toward the Thunderer, shouting until my throat tore. At first, I thought my crew did not hear me. Then I realized they were screaming too. The sea around the ship had begun to rise. A vast white arm slid from the black water. It was long as a mast and pale as dead fish flesh. Its fingers were thin, jagged, and jointed too many times. They curled around the side of my ship. The Thunderer cracked. Men ran across the deck. Some fired muskets. Some prayed. Some jumped into the sea. Another arm rose. Then another. The ship was pulled under. Not wrecked, not sunk by storm or cannon. Pulled down like a toy dragged beneath bathwater by a child. The sea swallowed my crew, my ship, and the screams of every man aboard. The wave threw my little boat over. I struck the water hard and would have drowned if not for one of Blackwood's barrels crashing into me. It was the only barrel he never recovered. I clung to it as the sea carried me away from that cursed island. I do not know how long I drifted. Hours, days' time became sun, thirst, salt, and terror. At last, I washed ashore on a rocky little island. I woke with my face pressed into gray sand, my body scraped and burned, my throat raw from seawater. The barrel had split open beside me. Its contents spilled across the beach. I saw arms, feet, hands, heads, eyes, lungs, coils of intestine. Pieces of men packed and preserved like food for market. Delicacies. Blackwood had called them. Rare delicacies. I fell to my knees and vomited until there was nothing left inside me. A passing merchant vessel rescued me some time later. I could not speak for days. Doctors examined me. Officers asked questions. I trembled like a child and answered none of them. They called it fever, shock, madness of the sea. Perhaps it was all three. No one asked about Blackwood. No one mentioned Potskill. No one seemed to know the island. The Thunderer was declared lost, and I was declared unfortunate to have survived. Unfortunate, yes, that is the word. I returned to England, but I did not return to life. I sleep little. I eat less. I hear water dripping where no water should be. I dream of the city under the lake. I dream of gold streets beneath black water. I dream of white eyes looking up at me. I dream of men and women I sold, standing in rows behind Jeremiah Blackwood, their mouths open, their tongues gone, their eyes accusing me. Worst of all, I understand him now. That is the horror I cannot bear. I thought Jeremiah Blackwood was a monster because he dealt in the flesh of mankind. But what was I? What did I do for 15 years? I sold bodies. I sold lives. I packed human beings into ships and carried them across the sea to be consumed by plantations and men with soft hands. Blackwood fed flesh to the creatures beneath the water. I fed flesh to empire. He wore his monstrosity openly once the mask came off. I hid mine under a captain's coat. Meat is meat, he said. Flesh is flesh. I hated him when he said it because I heard the truth in it. Now I sit in this rented room with my pistol ready, and still I know the weapon will not save me. The thing outside my door is patient. It has knocked 3 times tonight. The first time, I heard a soft tap. The second, a wet scrape. The third time, a voice came through the wood. It was Blackwood's voice, soft as silk. "Captain," it said. "The city remembers its merchants. I do not know if he has come for me, or if something else from that deep place has followed the scent of my soul. I only know that I am afraid, and that I deserve to be afraid. If any man reads this, do not seek the island. Do not follow any map marked in unknown script. Do not trust the pale gentleman who speaks of treasure and smiles with yellow teeth. And if you have made your wealth from the suffering of others, know this: the sea keeps account. Sooner or later, it collects. Christ, forgive me. Forgive me. Forgive me." Story 4. I opened my eyes and immediately started to panic. I could not move. For the first few seconds, I thought I had been buried alive. Everything around me was dark, tight, cold, and heavy. The air smelled like wet stone and old dirt. My back was pressed against something hard and freezing. I tried to lift my arms, and that was when I heard chains move. Not in a dreamlike way. Real chains. Metal scraping against stone. I pulled again, harder this time, and pain shot through my wrists. I was chained to a wall, an actual stone wall made from huge blocks of rock, each one slick with moisture. The cold of it had soaked through my shirt and into my skin. I forced myself to breathe, but every breath felt too small. The room was circular. I remember that very clearly. I do not know why that detail stayed with me, but it did. The walls curved around me in a wide circle, and all along them other people were chained just like I was. I could hear them breathing. Some were crying, quietly. Some were whispering prayers, but the room was so badly lit that I could not see their faces. Below us, stone steps led down toward the center of the room from every side, like we were sitting inside some kind of old pit or underground theater. In the middle of the floor was a raised stone slab. At first, I thought it was an altar. Then, I saw the figures standing around it. They looked human, but only in shape. Tall bodies, long robes, covered heads. Their faces were hidden under deep hoods. One of them held a torch, and that was the only light in the room. The flame moved in small, nervous waves, throwing shadows across the walls and making the figures look like they were changing shape every second. They began moving toward the people chained around the room. One by one, they unlocked someone, dragged them down the steps, and brought them to the stone slab. At first, the victims only cried. It was a soft, broken kind of crying, like they were trying not to be heard. But as they got closer to the slab, the crying turned into screams. The screams became worse and worse, higher and more desperate, until suddenly they stopped. Not slowly, not naturally. They just stopped. Then the figures went to the next person. This happened again and again. Every time, the same pattern. Chains, dragging, crying, screaming, silence. I knew my turn was coming. I could feel it in my bones. I pulled at my chains until my wrists felt raw, but my body seemed weak and useless. I tried to shout, but no words came out. My mouth opened. My throat tightened. Nothing happened. Then the robed figures came for me. They were close enough now for me to see the color of their robes. They were dark maroon, almost red, but not bright. They were the color of old blood dried into cloth. Each hood had a symbol stitched onto it in gold thread. An eye, a golden eye. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg. I wanted to ask who they were and why they were doing this. But my voice was gone. The figures unlocked my chains, lifted me like I weighed nothing, and dragged me down the stone steps toward the center. I tried to fight. My body would not obey. All I could do was watch. They placed me on the stone slab and chained my wrists and ankles down. The stone under me was colder than the wall had been. It stole the warmth from my body. The robed figures stood around me, their faces hidden, their golden eyes looking down from the tops of their hoods. I was so afraid that I did the only thing I could think of. I closed my eyes. I do not know what they did to me after that. I only know it started to hurt. At first, it was a sharp pressure in my chest, like someone had pressed a hot stone against my skin. Then the pain spread through my ribs, my stomach, my arms, and my neck. My voice came back, all at once, and I screamed as loudly as I could. I did not dare open my eyes. Heat rolled over my body. The pain grew worse. My ears began to ring. The ringing got louder. Louder, louder, until something hit me in the face. I opened my eyes, choking and swinging my arms. There was a pillow over my face. Danny, what the hell? I tore the pillow away and stared up at Jess. She was standing beside the bed in her t-shirt, breathing hard, her hair messy around her face. She looked angry, but under the anger there was fear. "This is the third time this week," she said. "Are you okay?" My heart was beating so fast it felt like it was going to break through my ribs. My shirt was soaked with sweat. The sheets were damp under me. For a second, I did not know where I was. The stone room still felt too close. I could still feel the chains around my wrists. I could still smell wet rock. Then the apartment came back, piece by piece. Jess's bedroom. Pale morning light through the curtains, clothes on the chair, her phone charging on the nightstand, the soft hum of traffic outside. I sat up slowly. Jess sighed and sat back down on the edge of the bed. "Same nightmare again?" she asked. I nodded. She rubbed her face with both hands. "Honey, maybe it's time you see a therapist or something. This isn't normal." I looked at the clock. 6:47 a.m. A Tuesday. I was already 20 minutes late for work. "Thanks for letting me crash here last night, Jess," I said, because I did not know what else to say. "I'm going to head to work. I'll see you later." She watched me like she wanted to stop me, but she didn't. I got dressed fast, left her apartment, and walked straight to my car. I sat behind the wheel for a full minute, trying to stop my hands from shaking. Then I pulled my laptop from my bag and opened it. I could not hold it in anymore. I needed to write everything down before I lost my nerve, or before something else happened. I am going to try to tell this in order, even though my hands are shaking and I have already read this first part 4 times and deleted it twice. My name is Danny. I am 29 years old. I work in data entry for a logistics company. Until about 3 weeks ago, the strangest thing about me was that I refused to own anything maroon. The robes are always the first thing I remember. Not faces. I never see faces. Only robes. Dark maroon robes, hanging heavy around the bodies of the people wearing them. They always appear at the edges of wherever I am. Sometimes I am in that round stone room. Sometimes I am in a hallway. Sometimes I am somewhere colder and deeper, where the walls seem too far away and too close at the same time. But the robes are always there. That wet, dark red color. The color of something that has been opened. They chant, too. I do not know the words. Maybe they are not words at all. The sound of it presses behind my eyes and makes my teeth ache. It feels like listening to a language my body understands, but my mind refuses to remember. There are always other sounds under the chanting. Crying. Children crying. That is the worst part. It does not stop. It stays under everything else, soft and constant, like a second voice in the room. I have had versions of this dream for as long as I can remember. Not every night. Maybe once every few weeks. Sometimes more when I am stressed. I never took it seriously before. I saw a therapist when I was 20, and she said it was probably an anxiety response. That made sense to me. I have always been anxious. I do not like crowds. I do not like feeling trapped. I do not like small rooms with no easy exit. And I absolutely cannot stand the color maroon. Crimson, too. Burgundy. That whole dark side of red where it starts looking deep and wet. It makes my skin crawl. My college roommate, Elliot, thought it was funny at first. During our freshman year, he bought a maroon throw blanket just to watch me flinch when I came into the room. I laughed along because that was easier than explaining that the color made something inside me go cold. Eventually, he stopped joking about it. I think he realized it was not really funny to me. 2 months ago, a woman moved into the apartment across the hall from mine. Her name was Vera. She was probably in her late 30s. She had dark hair pulled back so tightly that it made her face look sharper. She had perfect posture, the kind that makes everyone around her feel like they are slouching. She introduced herself on a Wednesday morning while I was trying to get my keys into the lock. She was polite, very polite, but there was something still about her that bothered me. When she smiled, her face made all the right movements, but the smile did not seem connected to anything real behind her eyes. I told myself I was being unfair. I told myself it was my anxiety. Sometimes people seem suspicious to me for no good reason. That did not mean they actually were. But then, she kept appearing. That is the part I keep thinking about now. She kept appearing. On Thursday morning, she was in line at my usual coffee shop, 2 people ahead of me. She did not turn around. She did not look at me. She just stood there, ordered her drink, and left. At the gym, where I go at a strange hour because I hate crowds, she was walking on a treadmill by the window. At the grocery store on Sunday, she was standing in the cereal aisle. On Tuesday, when I had to stay late at work, I saw her in the parking lot of my office building, getting into a gray sedan. She never looked at me. That somehow made it worse. I started keeping notes on my phone. I do that sometimes when my anxiety gets bad. A log helps me see if a pattern is real or if I am building one out of nothing. After 11 days, I had 7 entries. That was when I stopped telling myself it was nothing. Then the others started showing up too. There was a man at the laundromat, middle-aged, plain jacket, reading a paperback book. He sat 3 machines away from me and did not turn a single page in 40 minutes. I know because I was watching him. Every time I glanced up, he was sitting in exactly the same position. When I left, he closed the book. That was when I saw it had been upside down the whole time. There was a teenage girl with a bike outside my building. She sat on the low brick wall across the street for 4 days in a row, earbuds in, phone in her hand. Young enough that I felt stupid being afraid of her. Old enough that I was afraid anyway. Then there was Marcus from work. Marcus and I had worked near each other for 2 years. In all that time, we had probably spoken 100 words to each other. Then, all at once, he started asking me to lunch. At first, it seemed normal. Friendly, maybe he was just trying to be social. But the questions became strange. Did I have family nearby? Did I live alone? Did I ever lose time? Did I have blackouts or periods I could not remember? He asked these things like they were normal lunch conversation, as if he were just getting to know me. But by the third lunch, I was giving short answers and eating as fast as possible. The blackout question stayed with me, because I did not have a clean answer. I have gaps in my memory. I always have. My adoptive parents told me I had a rough start before they adopted me, and that was why I did not remember anything before age 4. Standard trauma response. That is what they said. That is what doctors said. That is what I believed. But when Marcus asked, something tightened behind my chest. I said, no, never. Then I changed the subject. The first thing that happened that I truly could not explain was on a Saturday afternoon during the 3rd week. I was coming back from a walk. I take walks when my apartment starts to feel like the walls are leaning in. No headphones, no destination, just walking until my thoughts calm down. It was gray outside and cold enough that most people had stayed indoors. I had actually started to feel normal for the first time in days. Then I turned the corner onto my street and almost walked straight into the man from the laundromat. The man with the upside-down book. He was standing on the sidewalk. No book this time. No excuse. No pretending. Just standing there, looking at me with an expression I can only describe as anticipation. "You're not sleeping well," he said. It was not a question. I said, "Excuse me?" and tried to step around him. He moved with me, blocking my way. "It's going to get worse before it gets better, Daniel," he said quietly. "We can make it stop. We can explain everything. Nobody calls me Daniel. My name is Danny. Even at work, even on official forms, people say Danny because that is how I introduce myself. My mailbox says D. Wren. There was no reason for him to say Daniel unless he knew something I did not. I walked around him fast. I did not look back. I made it to my apartment, locked the door, and stood in my kitchen, breathing through my nose until my hands unclenched. At some point, because the anger and fear had nowhere else to go, I grabbed a mug from the counter and threw it at the wall. It should have shattered. It did not. It hit the wall and bounced. Mugs do not do that. It struck the wall hard, bounced back like rubber, landed on the floor, spun in a circle, and stopped. Then I heard something in the hallway. Not Vera's door. Not someone walking upstairs. The hallway itself made a sound, like something very large had shifted its weight just outside my apartment. Mr. Hale's dog started barking next door. It barked for 20 minutes. I told myself the mug had been cheap ceramic, or the wall angle had been weird. I almost convinced myself, but the barking was harder to explain. A week later, I ran into Vera in the elevator. She looked at me and said, "You look exhausted. You should try valerian root." Then she looked at my chest. Not my face. My chest. I was wearing a plain gray shirt. No necklace, no design, nothing there. But she looked at my chest like she could see something under my skin. The elevator opened on the ground floor, and she walked out without another word. I need to tell you about my parents. My adoptive parents, Peter and Lena Wren, are good people, truly good people. The kind you do not fully appreciate until you become an adult and meet enough other families to realize how lucky you were. They adopted me when I was 4. They told me I came through the system. My file was sparse, even for a child from a difficult situation. My mom used to say I arrived with nothing but the clothes I was wearing and a willingness to eat everything she put in front of me. 2 days after the elevator incident, I called my dad. I told myself it was just a talk. He could tell something was wrong. He always can. He asked if I was okay. I said yes, just stress at work. Then I tried to sound casual. "Hey," I said, "did I ever have any medical stuff as a kid, like anything in my records when you adopted me?" There was a pause, a very short one. Probably nothing. But I have known my father for 25 years, and he does not pause before answering normal questions. He said, "No, your file was basically empty." That happens sometimes with kids from chaotic situations. You had some night terrors when you were little, but you grew out of them. Then he said I had been a happy kid. Then he asked again if I was okay. I said yes. We talked about normal things after that. His garden, my mom's book club, the neighbor's broken fence. Good things, safe things. When I hung up, I sat on the couch for a long time and thought about that pause. Marcus resigned from my company on a Friday. Just gone. He sent an email Thursday evening and cleaned out his desk. Nobody seemed to know why. His replacement started the following Monday, a woman named Priya. For 3 days, Priya seemed perfectly normal. Then she asked if I had ever thought about joining a meditation group. She said I had a lot of energy that needed direction. After that, I ate lunch alone at my desk for 2 weeks. The nightmares got worse. The stone room dreams stayed mostly the same. The robes, the chanting, the cold slab, the hands. But after I woke and fell back into shallow sleep, I started dreaming about something on my chest. A weight. Small, warm, I would reach for it and wake up with my hand pressed to my sternum. There was never anything there. What happened 3 weeks ago, on a Thursday, is the reason I am writing this now. I left work early because I had a headache. It had been building all day behind one eye, pulsing so hard I could barely look at my screen. I took the bus instead of walking home. I sat near the back, with my head against the window and my eyes half closed. Then I realized the woman in the seat in front of me was Vera. I had not seen her get on, I had not seen her sit down, but there she was, sitting straight, not moving. 2 seats behind me, by the rear door, was the teenage girl with the bike. No bike this time. Earbuds in. Phone in her hand, watching me over the top of it. Across the aisle sat a man I did not recognize. But he was too still, too careful, too deliberate. My neck went cold. I got off the bus 4 stops early. All 3 of them got off too. I walked fast. Then faster. I turned down a side street and cut through a parking garage because I knew the area. There was an exit on the other side that led to a busier road. I heard footsteps behind me. Not running, not rushed. Measured, that made it worse. The exit door was locked. It is never locked. I stood there, pulling the handle again and again like an idiot, while the footsteps entered the garage behind me. I turned around. Vera, the teenager, and the strange man stood about 30 feet away. They were spread out in a loose line, not moving, just watching me. Vera was holding something, a small, dark shape on a cord. She held it in both hands, slightly forward, like an offering. "Daniel," she said, "we have something of yours, and you have something of ours. We just want to talk." "You have the wrong person," I said. My voice echoed in the concrete garage. "You have the wrong person," I said again, louder. Vera's face did not change. "You survived, Daniel. Against all probability, you survived. We have been trying to understand what you did for a long time. We are not here to hurt you. We are here because we need you to finish what you started." The man behind her reached into his jacket. Then, something happened inside me. I do not have good words for it. It was not a thought. It was not a decision. It felt like a door inside me, a door that had always been there, suddenly swinging open on its own. All the stress, bad sleep, fear, and confusion rose at once. And something underneath answered. I heard it before I saw anything. A low sound filled the garage. Deep, heavy, so deep I felt it more in my teeth than in my ears. It came from the shadows behind the parked cars, from the spaces between the support pillars, from the dark corners where the light did not reach. Something was moving there, something too large to move in that space without touching anything. But it was not touching anything. Vera dropped the pendant. It hit the concrete with a small metallic sound. The look on her face changed. For the first time, she looked afraid, not surprised. Afraid, I ran. The fire exit door behind me, the one that had been locked seconds before, was suddenly open. I ran through it, down the alley, and out onto the bright street. I did not stop until I was inside a crowded cafe, with my back pressed against a wall and a cup of coffee in front of me that I never tasted. Back in the garage, I heard shouting, then one scream, then silence. No sirens came. No one followed me. I went home. I know I should have called the police. I know that. But what would I have said? That I was followed by my neighbor and strangers? That they called me Daniel and showed me a pendant? That something growled in the dark and I ran away? They would have wanted to check the garage. I did not want to know what was in the garage. Vera's apartment was silent when I got home. At around 9 that night, I looked through my peephole. Her door was slightly open, just an inch or two. In more than 20 years of apartment living, I have never seen someone leave their front door open like that at night. I did not go inside. I went back to my couch. At some point, I slept, and I dreamed the dream again. The robes, the stone, the chanting, the cold, the hands. But this time, at the end, before the heat and bright pain came, I looked down at my own chest. There was a pendant there, small, dark metal, hanging from a black cord. It was warm against my skin, even in the cold stone room. In the dream, something looked back. Not at me exactly. Through me. It was like looking through ice and seeing movement far below in deep water. Something huge, something patient, something waiting. I woke up at 3 in the morning and lay there for a long time. Then I started writing. This morning, I called my dad again. This time, I did not try to sound casual. I told him some of what had been happening, not all of it. Only the version that sounded least insane. Then I asked him directly if there had been anything in my file. Anything at all. There was another pause. Longer this time. Then he said, "Danny, I need to tell you something we probably should have told you a long time ago. They found me in 2001. A social worker in a rural county had responded to an anonymous tip about a property. A farmhouse, or what used to be a farmhouse. By the time anyone got there, most of it had burned. There were adults on the property. 11 of them. They were dead. The official report called it a fire of undetermined origin. The investigation went quiet very fast, the way investigations sometimes do when someone important decides they should. I was found in a field about 20 meters from the burned building. They guessed I was 3 or 4 years old. I had no ID. No one came forward to claim me. My file listed the rural county case number and almost nothing else. My dad's voice stayed steady as he told me. He is a steady man. But I could hear something under his words. A fear he had carried for a long time. We never asked too many questions, he said, because we were afraid of the answers. We just wanted you to be okay. We wanted you to have a normal life. I told him I loved him. I told him I would call again soon. Then I hung up and sat at my table while my coffee went cold. I thought about a farmhouse burning in 2001. I thought about 11 dead adults. I thought about a child found alive in a field. I thought about a pendant warm against cold skin. I thought about the door inside me opening when I was scared enough. And I thought about the thing that moves in dark places when that door opens. Vera's apartment is empty now. I checked this morning. The door was still open, so I looked inside. There was nothing. No furniture. No boxes. No clothes in the closet. The bathroom light was on over an empty sink. It was like she had never lived there at all. Priya did not come to work today. She called in sick. I do not know what they are. I do not know what I did in that farmhouse in 2001. I do not know what has been moving through parking garages and building hallways whenever I am scared enough to crack open. I do not know if more people are coming. I am writing this because I need someone to know. If you are reading this and you know anything about a cult farmhouse fire in a rural county in 2001, any detail at all, please tell me. And if you own anything in that dark end of red, maroon, crimson, burgundy, maybe keep it out of sight for a while. I do not fully understand why I am saying that, but I mean it. 6 hours after I wrote all of that, someone slid a piece of paper under my door. I heard it scrape across the floor. For almost 5 minutes, I just stared at it from the couch. Then I picked it up. It was a photocopy of what looked like an old handwritten ledger entry. The paper in the copy looked aged. The handwriting was neat but hard to read. There was a date near the top. I could make out a year ending in 97. Below, it was a list of names I did not recognize. At the bottom, someone had circled one line in pen. D. Castle. Vessel confirmed. Pendant transferred. Summoning incomplete. Primary subject unaccounted for. Pendant unresponsive since incident. Awaiting recovery of subject. He is the key, not the lock. Under that, in newer handwriting, someone had written another message. We found you, Daniel. We are not the ones who want to hurt you. We are the ones who stopped them in 2001. Please open your door. I have not opened my door. I am sitting here with the paper on the table in front of me, thinking about those words. Vessel confirmed. Pendant transferred. He is the key, not the lock. I am thinking about why the pendant does not respond to them. I am thinking about why it responds when I am near it, even when I do not touch it. I am thinking about the thing in the deep water, looking back through me. And I am starting to understand something that scares me more than Vera, more than the robes, more than the farmhouse, more than the thing in the dark. I do not think it has been waiting for them. I think it has been waiting for me to stop running from it. There is someone outside my door now. They have knocked 3 times. Not loud, not angry. Patient, I have my back against the wall, my laptop on my knees, and my eyes fixed on the little line of shadow under the door. I can see feet on the other side. 2 pairs, maybe 3. They are not moving. A voice just said my name, not Danny. Daniel, the way the man on the sidewalk said it, the way Vera said it, the way the voices in my dreams might have said it, if I had ever been able to understand the chanting. The voice on the other side of the door says they can help me. The thing inside me is awake. I can feel it turning slowly, like something huge under ice. I still do not know what I am going to do. But I know this. If I open the door, I may finally learn what I am. And if I do not open it, I am afraid the thing inside me will open something else. Story 5. I need to admit something I promised myself I would take to my grave. I told myself I would never write it down, never say it out loud, never let another living person know what really happened in this house. I thought I could bury it with her. I thought if I kept my mouth shut long enough, if I acted normal long enough, if I told enough lies with a straight face, the truth would turn into something distant and harmless. But it has not. The truth is still here. It is in the walls. It is in the mirrors. It is in the floorboards, in the backyard, in the bed where I sleep, in the kitchen where she used to stand with her back turned to me while I tried to explain myself, and she refused to listen. I cannot escape it anymore. I cannot pretend anymore. I am writing this because something in this house will not let me rest. And I need someone to know my side before the whole place goes up. Yes, I killed her. There, I said it. I killed Melanie. I did not plan it for weeks. I did not sit in the dark making some careful plan like a monster in a movie. I did not buy anything special or wait for the perfect night. It happened because she pushed me too far. That is what people will refuse to understand. They will only hear that I grabbed my wife, threw her down the stairs, and buried her in the backyard, and they will decide the whole story from that one sentence. They will not care about the 12 years before it. They will not care about the way she looked at me near the end, like I was something dirty stuck to the bottom of her shoe. They will not care about all the time she made me feel small in my own home. But I remember everything. I remember 12 years of marriage, 12 years of bills, repairs, work, family dinners, holidays, fights, apologies, and pretending things were fine when they were not. I remember working jobs I hated because someone had to keep the lights on. I remember taking extra shifts when money was tight. I remember coming home exhausted and still being told it was not enough. I remember the little sighs she made when I talked about money, like I was already disappointing her before I had even finished speaking. Then I found out about him. A bartender. That is the part that still burns in me. Of all the people she could have chosen, she picked some bartender who smiled at her across a counter and made her feel exciting again. Like I was not the man who built a life with her. Like I had not given her everything I had. Like 12 years could be thrown away for late-night drinks and stupid messages on a phone. She thought she could make a fool of me. She thought she could come back into this house and look me in the eye while lying to my face. She thought she could chew me up, spit me out, and walk away like I was nothing. Like I was trash. Like I had never mattered at all. So yes, I lost control. I know what that sounds like. I know people use those words when they want to make something ugly sound softer. But I am not trying to sound innocent. I am not innocent. I remember grabbing her by the hair. I remember her shouting my name, not with love or fear exactly, but with anger, like even in that moment she still thought she had the right to judge me. I remember the stairs behind her. I remember her trying to pull away. Then I remember the sound. I will never forget that sound. Her body hit the steps wrong. Her head struck the edge of one stair, then another. The house went quiet after that, except for the sound of her sliding to the bottom. I stood at the top of the stairs, breathing hard, my hands shaking, waiting for her to move. She did not move. At first, I told myself she was only unconscious. I went down the stairs slowly, one step at a time, like if I moved too fast, reality would catch up with me. She was lying at the bottom, twisted in a way people are not supposed to be twisted. Her neck had bent at a sick angle. Blood was coming from one ear and spreading into her brown hair. Her eyes were open, but they were not looking at me. They were looking through me. I said her name once. She did not answer. The house felt huge around us, empty and listening. I should have called someone. I know that. I should have called the police or an ambulance or anyone. But panic does strange things to a person. It does not always make you run or scream. Sometimes it makes you cold. Sometimes it makes your thoughts line up in a horrible, clear order. If I called, I would lose everything. The house, my job, my life, my freedom, my name. People would not ask what she had done to me. They would only see her dead on the floor and me standing over her. They would make me into the villain. Maybe I already was one, but I was not ready to let the world decide that. So I cleaned. I cleaned the stairs. I cleaned the blood. I wrapped her in plastic from the garage. I waited until the neighborhood was quiet. Then I carried her out the back door. The backyard was always her project. She hated it, but she kept trying to make it nice. She planted flowers that died every summer. She bought garden lights that stopped working after one season. She wanted a fire pit, then a vegetable bed, then a little stone path. Nothing ever made her happy for long. I buried her near the back fence, under the patch of ground where she once said she wanted lavender. I dug until my hands blistered. I lowered her into the hole. Her hair was caked with dirt by then, and her face had already started to look less like the woman I married and more like something that had been left behind. I told myself not to look at her, but I did. I looked one last time before I covered her. That should have been the end. It was not. The first few days after, I barely slept. I expected that. I expected guilt. I expected fear. I expected to hear police at the door every time a car slowed down outside. I expected to jump at every phone call. What I did not expect was to see her. The first time was in the bathroom mirror. It was late. I had been standing over the sink, splashing cold water on my face. I looked terrible. My eyes were red. My skin was gray. I gripped the edge of the sink and told myself to breathe. Then I looked up. Melanie was standing behind me. I froze. She was just there, reflected in the mirror over my shoulder. Her neck was twisted at the same sick angle it had been when she landed at the bottom of the stairs. Blood dripped from her ears and ran down the side of her face. Her brown hair hung in dirty knots around her cheeks. Soil clung to her skin. Her eyes were open. She looked exactly the way she had looked when I put her in the ground. I spun around so fast I hit my hip on the sink. The bathroom was empty. I turned back to the mirror. She was there again, standing right behind me. I screamed. I admit that. I screamed like a child. I backed into the wall and slid down until I was sitting on the floor, staring up at the mirror while she stared back at me. She did not move. She did not speak. She only watched. After a while, I crawled out of the bathroom without looking back. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, shock, a guilty mind making pictures where there were none. People see things after trauma. People hear things. I looked it up online. I found pages about grief, hallucinations, sleep deprivation. I read them until my eyes hurt, trying to convince myself that what I had seen had a normal explanation. But guilt does not leave mud on the bathroom tile. The next morning, there was dirt on the floor, a few dark clumps near the sink. Damp, real, I picked one up and rubbed it between my fingers. It smelled like the backyard after rain. I threw up in the toilet. After that, the mirrors became worse. I would catch her in the hallway mirror when I passed by. Just a flash at first. A pale face behind me. A bent neck. A blur of dirty hair. Then she started staying longer. I would stand still, trying not to breathe, and she would stand behind me in the reflection. If I turned around, the room would be empty. If I looked back at the mirror, there she was. Always behind me. Always close. Never touching. That was almost worse. The waiting. The silence. The way she stared like she had all the time in the world. I broke the first mirror with my fist. The glass shattered into the sink, cutting my knuckles. For 1 second, I felt relief. Then I saw her face in every broken piece. Dozens of Melanies looking up at me from the shards, all with the same dead eyes. I broke 2 more mirrors after that. The hallway mirror and the one in the guest room. It did not help. If anything, it made her angry. Or maybe it made her stronger. After the mirrors, the sounds started. I would come home from work and hear her in the kitchen. At first, it was dishes. The soft clink of plates. Water running in the sink. A cup being set on the counter. Normal sounds. Married sounds. The kind of sounds that used to mean someone else was in the house. Someone who lived there with me. The first time it happened, I nearly cried before I remembered she was dead. I stood in the entryway with my keys in my hand, listening. The sink was running. Then I heard her humming. It was the same tune she used to hum when she cooked. I never knew the name of it. I used to hate that tune because she hummed it when she was ignoring me, when she was angry but pretending not to be, when she wanted me to know I had disappointed her without saying it out loud. I walked toward the kitchen. The humming stopped the moment my foot crossed the doorway. The room was empty. The sink was dry. There were no dishes in the basin, no wet counter, no sign anyone had been there. But I could smell her shampoo, just for a second. Then it was gone. After that, it happened almost every day. Sometimes I heard vacuuming in the living room. Sometimes the washing machine running when I had not touched it. Sometimes cabinet doors opening and closing. Once, I woke in the night to the sound of someone folding laundry at the foot of my bed. When I turned on the light, there was nothing there. But my work shirts were stacked neatly on the dresser. I had left them in the dryer. People will say this was my conscience. They will say my mind was punishing me. They will say the house was quiet and I filled the silence with memories of her. I wanted to believe that. I truly did. Because if it was only in my head, then maybe there was still a way out. But you cannot explain the smell. You cannot explain the dirt. You cannot explain the way the locked back door started opening by itself every night at 3:17. That was the time she died. I checked. I had looked at the clock after she stopped breathing. 3:17 in the morning. Every night after the third mirror broke, the back door opened at exactly 3:17. Not wide, just a crack, enough to let in the smell of damp earth. The backyard sits outside my kitchen window, and I stopped looking at it after dark. I could feel the hole back there, even though I had covered it carefully. Every time I washed a dish or made coffee, I felt it behind me. The fence, the patch of dirt, the place where she lay under the ground in the yard she hated. Sometimes, while I stood at the sink, I heard scratching on the glass. Slow, patient. I never opened the curtains. I started drinking more. I admit that, too. Whiskey, mostly. It helped at first. It blurred the edges of everything. It made the sounds softer and the shadows less sharp. But then she began showing up when I was drunk, too, and somehow that was worse. A sober man can still tell himself he is tired or stressed. A drunk man knows he is weak, and the dead love weakness. I started talking to her. At first, I screamed, "What do you want?" I yelled into empty rooms. "What do you want from me?" She never answered. I called her cruel. I called her selfish. I told her she had ruined my life once already and had no right to ruin it again. I told her this house was mine now. I told her she should be grateful I buried her here instead of somewhere worse. Sometimes I stood by the kitchen window and shouted toward the backyard. "Well, Melanie, are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? You hated this house when you were alive. You hated the yard. You hated everything I gave you. So how does it feel to rot under it?" The house always went quiet after that, but not peaceful quiet. Listening quiet. Waiting quiet. This morning was the last straw. I woke up before dawn because the bed was cold. Not the normal kind of cold from a draft or a bad window. This cold was deep and wet, like the sheets had been soaked in grave water. I opened my eyes and rolled over. She was in bed beside me. Her face was inches from mine. Her hair spread across the pillow, dirty and tangled. Her skin was pale and swollen. Her lips were dark. One eye was half covered by strands of hair, but the other was open wide, staring straight into me. Her neck bent at that awful angle, making her head rest too low against her shoulder. Blood had dried under both ears, but fresh dark liquid still gathered there, sliding down onto my pillow. The smell hit me all at once. Rot, blood, wet soil, old perfume. I screamed and fell off the bed. I hit the floor hard and scrambled backward, kicking at the blankets, trying to get away. My shoulders slammed into the dresser. Something fell and broke. I do not know what it was. When I finally managed to stand, she was gone. But the bed was not empty. There was dirt on her side of the mattress. A body-shaped stain darkened the sheets, and on the pillow, written in mud by a finger, were 2 words: "Come home." That was when I made my decision. I am done. If she wants to haunt this house, I will take the house away from her. If she wants to follow me from room to room, stare through mirrors, hum in the kitchen, and crawl into my bed like she belongs here, then I will give her nothing left to haunt. People will call this a confession. Maybe it is. People will call it a final note. Maybe that too. I do not care anymore. The living world has already turned against me, and the dead will not leave me alone. I have poured gasoline through the living room and down the hallway. The smell is sharp and thick, stronger than the smell of the grave for once. It burns my nose. It makes my eyes water. The house is quiet now. Too quiet. I think she knows. The broken mirrors are still in the trash, but I can feel her in every dark window. I can feel her under the floor. I can feel her in the backyard, waiting for me to change my mind. She always thought she could wait me out. She always thought if she stayed silent long enough, I would be the one to crack. Maybe she was right. But she does not win. To Melanie's family, since I know someone will find this if the fire does not take everything, you always hated me. Do not pretend you did not. You smiled at dinners and whispered when my back was turned. You told her she deserved better. You filled her head with ideas about leaving, about starting over, about finding someone who could give her more. You helped make her think I was not enough. Maybe now you will get what you wanted. Maybe now you can stand in front of a pile of ashes and tell everyone how much you loved her. Maybe you can cry for the cameras if there are cameras. Maybe you can talk about how you always knew there was something wrong with me. Go ahead. Say whatever makes you feel clean. And if I wake up as a ghost, maybe I will come visit you too. Wouldn't that be funny? To Melanie, if you are here, and I know you are, it did not have to be this way. You could have been a good wife to me. You could have stayed. You could have respected what I gave you. You could have kept this house warm instead of turning it into a place full of lies. Even after everything, even after what happened on the stairs, you could have let me live here alone, in peace. But no, you had to come back. You had to stand behind me in the mirror. You had to move through the rooms like you still owned them. You had to climb into my bed. You had to remind me every second of every day that you were still here. So now I am taking it all. The house, the pictures, the kitchen, the bedroom, the stairs, the backyard, your flowers, your little decorations, Every trace of the life you said was not good enough. It is all going up with me. The lighter is in my hand. The house is still quiet. I thought I would hear her by now. I thought she would scream or cry or beg. I thought maybe she would appear one last time, standing at the end of the hallway with her twisted neck and dead eyes, trying to scare me into stopping. But there is nothing. Only the soft tick of the clock. Only my breathing. Only the gasoline smell filling the house. Wait, there it is. A sound from the kitchen. Not dishes. Not humming. Not footsteps. Laughter. Soft at first. Then louder. It is her laugh, but wrong. Not cruel, exactly, not mocking either. It is deeper than that. It sounds like someone laughing because they finally understand the end of a joke that took years to tell. I am standing in the living room now, and I can see her reflection in the dark television screen. She is behind me. But she is not alone. There are others standing with her. I can barely see them in the black glass, but they are there. Pale shapes, bent necks, broken faces. People I do not know. Men, women, one of them looks like the bartender. No, that cannot be right. I never touched him. I only followed him once. I only wanted to see where he lived. I only wanted to know what made him better than me. He is smiling, too. Melanie is closer now. In the reflection, her hand rests on my shoulder. I cannot feel it, but I can see the fingers digging in. Her face is near my ear. Her mouth is moving. I do not want to write what she is saying. No, that is not true. That is not what happened. She did not fall before I touched her. She did not try to run because I had locked the door. She did not beg me to stop. She did not tell me she was pregnant. She did not. She did not. She did not. The hallway smells like smoke now, but I have not lit anything. The living room is getting warmer. I can hear sirens far away. How would they know? The back door is open. I can see the yard from here. The dirt near the fence is moving. Something is pushing up from underneath. No, not something. Someone. Melanie is still behind me in the reflection, smiling with that broken mouth. Now I understand. She did not come back to haunt the house. She came back to make sure I stayed long enough. I am lighting the fire now. I hope this story hits you like a brick to the skull.